Welcome back to Monster Month, everybody. I am the Green Scorpion, and I am so excited to finally be doing this topic. Werewolves have always fascinated me, and not just because wolves are one of my favorite animals. From the animalistic behaviors to the potential balance of power and tragedy, they can be the subject of a character duality interesting enough to carry its own story. The history of werewolves follows a similar track to vampires, born in ancient Greece, perpetuated in medieval times, and domesticated into our culture by a 1940s film. In this case, the Greek figure is Lycaon, king of Arcadia, who was transformed into a wolf for tricking Zeus. The term lycanthropy was then used both as a clinical term for people who thought they were wolves, and for the mythical illness that created a werewolf. The legends were popular enough to migrate around the world, and in regions without indigenous wolves, lycanthropes were said to take the forms of tigers, apes, and even bears. As wolves were seen as a symbol for the devil, suspicious ne'er-do-wells were tried as werewolves in the Dark Ages. And 1941's The Wolfman cemented our idea of a werewolf as someone who unwillingly shifts between human and wolf, or sometimes a therianthropic mix of the two. So werewolves can be a lot of things. It can be a natural ability in a race native to some fantasy world. It can be a person with some type of condition who either embraces or avoids their wild side. I'll even consider some non-wolf lycanthropes as long as they follow a similar theme of untamed fury. They can also take the Old English literally and just be a human-dog hybrid, but they can't just be anthropomorphic like Wolf O'Donnell, or dire wolves like Sith. Now that all that's been established, let's fetch us the top 10 werewolves in video games. Sit, stay, good audience. Like Dr. Zomboss from Plants vs. Zombies or Spooky from Pac-Man, it's time for a representative character. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it now. Representing the companions, it's Aela the Huntress. In Skyrim, the companions are a band of mercenaries who live life on the wild side. If you can earn their trust, they'll let you join, so long as you accept one small catch. You have to become a werewolf. Well, this is a big life decision. I'm gonna need some time to... Yes! And in case you missed it the first time, hell yes! Aela is among the first of the companions that you meet in the game, and while you spend more time with Farkas and Kodlak during your initiation, she supplies her own blood for you to drink in the ritual. Gross. And gets much more involved from there. Once you've gotten some dirt between your claws, she'll start giving you quests dealing with the Silver Hand, a dangerous group of werewolf hunters. Take care of them, and not only will Aela offer you archery training, she'll be available as a follower and even for marriage. Aela proves to be one of the coolest partners to have on a quest. She's not great with armor or shields, which is weird because you have to retrieve a shield for her in an early quest, but she's a great archer, so it's nice to see her be useful in human form too. She even helps you perk up your werewolf form by finding the totems of Hircine, and this includes detecting life, howling fear into the enemy, and summoning freaking spirit wolves. Plus, she's a really chill partner. You can steal goods or attack the innocent and she's totally cool with it. I mean, werewolves, right? She'll even stick by you if you somehow cure your lycanthropy, and will offer to give it back whenever you want it. She's not judging you, you just do your thing and she'll do hers. Even if she's not traveling with you, she can eventually join the Blades and graduate to hunting dragons. She doesn't do a ton of werewolfing herself, but there are few people I'd rather have on the hunt, so long as there's not too much rabble. She hates that.
Ysgramor himself wouldn't have the patience to deal with all the rabble around here.
Oh look, Shining Force, that other turn-based strategy RPG. While I much prefer Fire Emblem for perfecting the formula, in the early 90s, Shining Force was all we had in the US, and you know what? It holds up pretty well. Maybe it's because I'm so used to Fire Emblem, but the world of this game is really out there, including the use of races. Right from the first game, well, second game technically, you got humans, elves, dwarves, centaurs, bird people, armadillo people, and in Zylo's exceptional case, a wolf person. Where Skyrim and most other games treat lycanthropy as an affliction and template it over a human or other race, Zylo is the opposite. Werewolf is just what he is, and wolf-like man. He's still a model citizen and protector of a village called Bustoke. The bad guys do slip him a rage-inducing Mickey, so there's still that angle, and everyone in town is pretty heartbroken to have to lock him up. Get some lunar dew to cure him, and he's free to go. No parole necessary. Refreshingly, there isn't really any kind of racism in this world, so no one here cares what he looks like. I, on the other hand, do care what he looks like because he looks awesome! Check out the official artwork. A tough but wise-looking white wolf augmented with clawed gauntlets. He's on my team instantly, every single time. Zylo stands tall as one of the game's best characters, which is really saying something. He runs as fast as most centaurs without the crippling penalties from rough terrain. This trait is usually reserved for archers and flying units, but unlike them, Zylo can hit like a truck and tank like a brick house. He's invaluable from the first mission, since the next battle is littered with foliage, and he comes in nearly ready to promote into a wolf baron, with more spirit wolves. I wish all werewolves did that. He doesn't have a lot to say, that's just the nature of this game, and even in the GBA remake, he's really on the quiet side. But give him a try and you'll never regret it. Action speaks louder than words. I have some issues with Warwick the Blood Hunter. It's not that he's not a good champion, he's been with League of Legends since launch, and is just as synonymous in the series as Ryze and Katarina, but other than lycanthropy, Warwick underwent a more gruesome transformation, an unnecessary lore change. Originally, Warwick was an alchemist involved in the biological warfare against Ionia, until Soraka the Star Child righteously cursed him into the form that reflected the cruelty of his heart. More recently, they've pulled Warwick's biography away from chemistry, instead making him a manhunter who collected human test subjects for Zon. Now his transformation is his own doing. Singed made him a concoction that would optimize his physical might, but to finish it, it needed one last ingredient, the heart of a celestial being. The only one Warwick knew of was Soraka the Star Child, so he posed as an injured beggar to keep her off guard. His ruse failed, however, and Soraka star-called his sorry butt back to Zon. Seriously, it was such a bad betrayal, Callista didn't even bother marking him for vengeance. He took the uncompleted potion anyway, turning him into the Fleabag we know and love. He continues his hunt, determined to kill Soraka so that he can stabilize his new, murderous powers before he completely loses control. Minor story gripes aside, the Mad Dog of Zon is a great champion. With his tankiness and relatively simple toolkit, not to mention his low IP pricing, I highly recommend him for any new players trying to learn how to jungle. It's all about that sweet, sweet lifesteal. His passive recovers health as you attack, and his Hungering Strike is a fast swipe that restores a good chunk of health. Get him the blue buff, and he can sustain himself off jungle creeps for a long time. He'll also teach you how to gank. Blood Scent activates whenever he's near an enemy at half health or lower, locating them even in bushes and giving Warwick bonus movement speed to chase them down. They'll know you're coming when they hear that howl, but they don't necessarily know where you're coming from, and you can always turn it off for stealth mode. Warwick's great at chasing wounded baddies, and once close enough, he can activate his ultimate Infinite Duress, where he blinks to the opponent and holds them in place while he just goes to town on them. And it lasts, like, forever. Little strategy required. Just get close enough, maybe flash, press R, and then take a break to file your tax returns while you regain most of your health. Warwick never really needed much of a strategy though, did he? He doesn't have the bells and whistles of some junglers like Rengar or Zac, though that might change soon now that he's slated for a rework. But for now, the simplicity works in his favor. He hunts, he ganks, enough said.
Let's make this fun.
I've been thinking for a long time that we need a good werewolf game. Not one where you can optionally become a werewolf, but one where the main character is a werewolf who transforms as a major mechanic. There are games that split the two when trying to do this, like Twilight Princess and Sonic Unleashed, and it worked alright as a platformer in Blood of the Werewolf, but I think the closest we've ever gotten was Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. And that's kinda sad. It's not the worst game I've ever played, certainly better than Castlevania 64, but it still suffers from chunkiness and muddy visuals like many early 3D games. That's a shame too, because I really like Cornell. Cornell hails from a tribe of cursed beastmen. While others on this list like Aela and Warwick revel in the devastation they cause, the Beast Tribe sealed its power so that they could coexist with humanity, but accidents do happen. After the tribe tore a village apart, Cornell adopted the lone survivor, a girl named Ada, and vowing to protect her, underwent extensive training of mind and body. Not only did he gain full control over his feral urges, he broke the seal, making him the most powerful in the tribe, fast enough to break the sound barrier and even able to shoot energy blades from his claws. His tribe named him the Blue Crescent Moon for his ability to transform any time of the lunar cycle. Unfortunately, his powers also attracted Dracula's attention, and before long, Cornell was storming Castlevania to rescue a kidnapped sister. There's a lot of interesting ideas here that could have been explored on a stronger console. I mean, this is a pretty cool character design, but in-game it looks like this. He came back in Castlevania Judgment at least. Why he made the cut and not Soma, I couldn't tell you, but it was great to see him and he looks pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie though, I miss the frail human form. For a guy nicknamed Blue Crescent Moon, you'd think there'd be some blue on him. And at what point in Aeon's time rift did he get encased in metal? Also, who is this guy? And why does he keep coming up whenever I image search Cornell? Wait, Cornell is in Lords of Shadow? How did I not know about this? Here he's an immortal brother of light who inadvertently gave rise to the world's lycanthropes. He's absurdly strong, wields a big warhammer, and has a crazed lichen form. I guess this is a separate Cornell, since Lords of Shadow is in a different continuity, but it's definitely a version of the first character at least. Or is Cornell just a common man-beast name? I'm counting it.
Not all children of the night are evil.
I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be any good at being a world leader. If Civ 5 is any indication, it's actually pretty difficult. But I like to think I do a better job than Genn Greymane from World of Warcraft. Bless his soul, he's trying. Greymane is the king of Gilneas and one of the founding members of the Alliance of Lotharing, which united humans, dwarves, night elves, etc. against the likes of orcs and goblins. Gilneas was one of the strongest human kingdoms in Azeroth, but after the Second War, Greymane decides he wanted to stay out of other nations' problems and dropped out of the Alliance. Don't do that. I mean, seriously, it's not like the Horde's just going to ignore you now. With Forsaken at the door, Greymane did what all great leaders do. Built a wall. But those walls soon became a prison for the people of Gilneas. Civil war erupted, and some druids got the bright idea to release the Worgen, which spread a vicious plague throughout the ally-less capital, and by the time the Cataclysm knocked the wall down, Genn and his people were already transformed. Now they're back in the Alliance with their new tails between their legs. Well, in Genn's defense, he was just trying to help his people, and he was being manipulated by a dragon in human form, and now we can play as Worgen, who are pretty awesome. The character really started developing in Legion, and there's a lot more about him in the novel tie-in Wolfheart. But who am I kidding, I never read that. I met him in Heroes of the Storm. MOBAs have given us a lot of transforming characters before, like Nidalee from League, but Greymane has to be one of my favorite examples. Rather than reserving one ability just for transformation, Greymane shifts mid-ability, lunging into wolf form and then rolling away back into human. You can do the ranged swashbuckling with flint and cocktails, then bare your teeth and go for the throat. He may have made some political mistakes, but the man knows how to fight. Well, actually, he's doing pretty well in politics now too. As Anduin's right-hand man, Genn's kind of the de facto leader of the Alliance now. On the flip side, Sylvanas is leading the Horde now. This war's gonna last forever, isn't it?
You took my son's future. And now, I've taken yours.
Welcome to Bloodborne. Now die. Like Dark Souls before it, Bloodborne is a trial of frustration and torment. How tough is it? They don't even let you through the door until you beat Father Gascoigne, a hunter with strength and experience far surpassing yours. You can tell there's a lot of history with this guy. The cleric came to Yharnam to combat the malevolent plague that's corrupted its citizens. He has a long career purging the streets of monsters and maniacs, and he will even help you in the starting area if you want. But as is the fate with all hunters, he eventually succumbs to the bloodlust and becomes part of the problem. He seemed like a righteous man, though. Can we reason with him? Well, considering you find him pulling an axe out of his own wife, probably not. If you weren't sure whether or not you'd like this game, this is where you're gonna find out. Gascoigne sets the tone of the game perfectly, both in atmosphere and challenge. The requirements of this fight, learning his patterns and sneaking in your own attacks, are the same you'll be using for the rest of the game, and he's made countless players rage quit before they could even sink any deeper into Bloodborne. He puts all cards on the table. This game is hard. You'll get through the first phases of the fight pretty easily, and the second soon after. But get him down to a third of his health and... Yep, there it is. Werewolf. So not only do you get to fight a turned hunter, you fight a big old monster, which are the two main kinds of bosses you'll be dealing with for the next 10 hours. You can even make the fight a bit easier by finding his quarantined daughter, who gives you his wife's music box. Playing the music box in the first two phases can temporarily stun him, but abusing it might make him transform prematurely, and you don't want that. And don't think for a second that just because he's bigger the game will slow him down. Oh no, there's no lumbering going on here. If anything, he's gotten faster. He doesn't waste time telegraphing his attacks, he's just up in your face the whole time. The Soulsborne series is known for its hidden, hard to uncover lore, but I don't need a single scrap of story to empathize with this guy, even if he is just rude and murderous. He's just a withered hero turned wild, the rage-quit gatekeeper sitting atop his throne of busted controllers. Beyond him lies madness, and the only way forward is to get good. Fire Emblem's had shape-shifting characters since the very beginning. In fact, Radiant Dawn even has its own race of wolf lagoos I could turn to. Valyug or Aela totally could have made it onto the list. But thanks to Fire Emblem Fates, we now have one of my new favorite classes. Leader of the Wolfskin, it's Keaton the Lupine Collector. Right off the bat, I love his look. A little European medieval and a little punk rock. But like with all of my favorite characters in the series, it's in conversation where he really shines. He's friendly enough if you meet him under the right circumstances, but he can be aloof or downright bloodthirsty if something's bothering him. He's a tough guy to figure out until you realize one thing: he's literally a human dog. He tries to act disinterested, but his wagging tail betrays him whenever he smells sausage or gets his ears scratched. He's loyal to a fault, loves to play with the kids, which he'll outright deny, and in Conquest he actually gets lost and follows you home. Then there's his prized treasure collection. Dead animals, pieces of garbage, all kinds of stinky trinkets he's overjoyed to share with you. Oh, and human remains. Yeah, he's eaten people, he's a wolf. But you have a sincerest vow that he won't eat you. Unless you're playing Birthright. There you see him leading his pack on Mount Garou, and he's pretty territorial. He's not without reason though, he's willing to let Corrin pass through peaceably, but once Iago interferes and one of Keaton's friends is killed, there's no turning back. Believe me, you're going to want this guy on your side. Wolfskin are great units with excellent stats across the board. Maybe he's a little lacking in resistance and skill, but I never had too much reservation throwing him into the fray. Once he lines up with the enemy, he spikes his fur and morphs into... the Incredible Hulk? Sorry, but that's just not what I expected his beast form to look like. Sure, he's lacking any kind of ranged option, but you won't miss it too much, especially once he promotes into a Wolfsasenior. But what in the hell does that mean? Well, fun bit of history. In the 1500s, the Bavarian Alps were overrun with wolves. The Wolfsasenior were Bavarian hermits who made a living as wolf charmers and concocted wards to keep them away. It got to the point that from 1590 to 1650, Wolfsasenior were persecuted as witches and werewolves. I'm not kidding, that's actual fact! That would also explain the ability Beastbane, making Keaton especially good at removing enemy monsters and cavalry. He's very good at foraging for base items, he regains health on odd-numbered turns like some kind of lunar cycle thing, and he eventually gets the ability Grisly Wound, which deals an automatic 20% damage to enemies after any battle. That's insane! Keaton has a lot of these qualities too, but he's a kitsune, not a werewolf. The only competitor here is Valoria, Keaton's own daughter. I like her and her design a lot too. She's Red Riding Hood and the wolf all in one, and depending on genetics, she can easily surpass her father. But Keaton ties it all together for me. And his birthday is October 30th, Mischief Night, and that must count for something. As for the Incredible Hulk form, it's weird, but if I was a Hoshidan, I wouldn't want one of those bounding towards me. As if I needed another reason to prefer Conquest.
Just in time for dinner. Fresh meat.
So it's mid-August. I decide I'll finally give Darkest Dungeon a try. Seems pretty neat. Next thing I know, I've sunk 80 hours into the game. Jeez. In this game, you form squads of wayward heroes to plunge the depths of your mad ancestors' estate into almost certain death. The roster consists of 15 classes, each brimming with personality and backstories similar to the likes of TF2. Among these unfortunate souls is our number 3 pick, the Abomination. This serf was cursed with eldritch blood and the ability to transform into a hideous demon. At first I was unsure about calling him a werewolf. He doesn't turn into a wolf per se, more of a horned, slightly lupine devil, but the abilities and flavor scream lycanthropy. Hated for his curse, he was beaten, bound in chains, and imprisoned for decades. His captors even branded his head with a scarlet letter so that everyone would know to detest him. He's a pretty miserable looking guy, and his unique quotes during dungeon runs can be heartbreaking at times. The Abomination has to be the strangest class in the game. Most characters have 7 combat skills, from which they can have only 4 equipped, but you won't have to make that choice with him. He carries his entire loadout at all times, with the ability to transform, and 3 skills for each of his forms. In beast form, his already impressive stats are boosted, making him one of the game's heaviest hitters. He can rake multiple opponents, or use his headbutt to disrupt the enemy's formation and bring targets to the forefront. And his human form has its uses too. He can swing his chains to stun enemies, and he has this strange ability to spit bile at multiple enemies to inflict blight, making him a great partner for the Plague Doctor. You'll want to keep him in human form when you can, however. When in monster form, the Abomination spreads massive amounts of stress on himself and his party members, and believe me, you don't want that stress building up. You'd think that'd be enough of a drawback, but there's an even more absurd quality. That thing about him being ostracized by society isn't just for backstory. Religious characters absolutely refuse to travel in a party with him. That means you can't use the Crusader, the Leper, and worst of all, the Vestal, the best healer in the game. There's no one else in the game with this problem. These guys have no qualms working with grave robbers and occultists, but the Abomination just can't be trusted. Jerks! His self-defeating dialogue doesn't help either. Whether or not it's worth it is up to you, but either way, you'll definitely feel the entirety of his confliction. Personally, traveling without a white mage makes me kind of nervous, but he's so freaking worth it! I can't even explain it, it's the best feeling in the world.
A victory. Perhaps the turning point.
So you've decided to use your feral curse for good. That's great. But how are you going to suppress those rabid tendencies? You can mercilessly kill the bad guys until the bloodlust consumes you. You can bottle it up until a monster encounter eventually sends you into cardiac arrest. Or you can meditate until Dracula comes by to take your powers. Then there's John Talbane, who was born a werewolf and relieved stress by taking up kung fu. Seriously, best coping method I've seen. The benefits of martial arts aren't just physical, they foster mental and spiritual improvement. And how many werewolf Bruce Lees have you seen? With most lycanthropes, giving them wolf powers is usually enough. Their human halves might have different tools, but for the most part their beast forms just rely on teeth, claws, and brute strength. Talbane certainly has the biting and scratching down, but also mixes in a surprising amount of technique. Fast-flying kicks let him change direction mid-air. He can even channel his ki into a giant wolf-headed projectile. Oh hey, Sabrewulf came back. And he'll even bust out nunchucks from time to time. A werewolf with nunchucks! Sold. But weapons don't make the wolf man. After all, Brad Fang from Contra has a machine gun arm, and he didn't even make the list. His father's Marai blood cursed him into a killing machine, but Talbane refused this destiny and has spent his entire life proving that he and other Darkstalkers could fit into society. Ever since his first transformation in his home country of England, he's faced discrimination, but he never let it embitter him, and instead fought to protect those who feared him. Even if society as a whole never accepted him, he's a hit with the kids. During his adventures in Magigan, he conquered his bloodline by taking on Dark Talbane, the very embodiment of his own dark essence. And though he's certainly capable of ripping your face off, he also has the gentility to care for his 2 adopted children. There's a lot of great foster care in the werewolf community, apparently. Combined with the novelty of his martial arts, Talbane is what comes to mind when I think werewolf. It's time for me to give credit to the most nuanced, badass werewolf in all of video games, the one and only Bigby Wolf from The Wolf Among Us. A prequel to the Fables graphic novels, this Telltale game explores the... Wait, Fables? He's based off a comic book character? But I had a whole character study planned! And this game is even canon to the books! I can't use him! Damn it! Well, it's a good thing I held on to Sabrewulf. I gotta say, I'm not too upset, though some of you might be. Oscar, I hear you ask, why is this month bombarded with yet another Killer Instinct character? Well, my distinguished guest, this isn't just any Killer Instinct character to me. Sabrewulf just happens to be my main in one of my favorite fighting games in the past decade. And the reason for that ties into both his lycanthropy and the qualities that make this game so darn good. Let's start from his transformation. Baron Conrad von Sabrewulf, sole progeny of the conveniently named family that ran the German branch of the monster hunting Night Watch. But Conrad preferred the neck of a bottle to the hilt of a sword. While drunkenly exploring his newly inherited castle, he cut his hand on the fang of a taxidermy dire wolf, and that was enough to change his life forever. Conrad was never much for controlling himself around women or drugs, but now he was the life of a party that would never stop. He tried everything to cure his lycanthropy, traveling the world for cures magical or medicinal, and while his lupine form eventually shifted from quadrupedal to bipedal, he never gained any more control over his transformation. In fact, each concoction only lengthened his wolf time until he awoke one morning in horror to find that he could no longer return to humanity. Now he fights for a way out, be it through Ultra Tech or on his own. Did you know Rare used the name Sabrewulf before Killer Instinct? Back when they were called Ultimate, they made an adventure game called Sabrewulf for the ZX Spectrum in 1984, the first in the Saberman adventure series. In it, players guided an explorer through a jungle maze avoiding enemies, including the titular giant blue canine. It's not uncommon for Rare to reuse names, but I think it's possible these two might actually be the same wolf. This could have been Conrad when he first began searching for possible cures, maybe those strange mushrooms that Saberman would use. The Killer Instinct wiki does mention that he has an addiction to opiates, fungus that could make you invulnerable, reverse your controls, and alter your perception of time. The only question left is who braided his neck hair? Seriously, can Wolf Conrad even do that himself? Fast forward through the 90s Killer Instincts, including that brief period when he had cybernetic parts and lightning powers, and we get the 2013 reboot. Have I explained yet how great this game is? It takes the modern fighter scene and flips it on its head. Combos are exhilarating to learn, but the spin-out system and the chance for combo breakers keep it from being a game of rocket tag. I'm looking at you, Marvel 3. The result is a game just as strategic as Street Fighter, but much more aggressive. So here's my point. Sabrewulf, thematically, is the best character to embody the unique style of this game. It's savage, it's fast, even the zoners operate with frantic speed. You can't just sit and watch what your opponent's going to do, you have to be proactive, and it's the rushdowns like Sabrewulf that set the pace for these showdowns. You're not allowed to stop, you will get mauled. Playing Sabrewulf looks and feels like a crazed frenzy. You just have to go in with everything you've got, relying mostly on muscle memory to thrash at them, but still keeping that 10% of your human brain running to throw in mix-ups and avoid being countered. Light, medium, heavy, standing straight or dropping to the ground to bite at their feet. Don't let Glacius create distance, don't let Agano set up. Get in there and finish your prey. Jago had to hone his ninja skills, Fulgor was built for success, but Sabrewulf, more than anyone else, fights by his own killer instincts. He is the truest proponent of the game, and what a fantastic game it is. I am the Green Scorpion, and if one character can exemplify and influence a game's mechanics this superbly, you know I'm going to throw him a bone. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next week for the finale of Monster Month. Sabrewulf, take us away.
Here's a dog. Here's another dog. Oh my god, it's another dog. Cute! I like dogs.